All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode. I say this every time, but every time it is so special, of Submission Radio Live. A lineup here of all lineups, OGs, legends of the game that have inspired me for many, many years. I want to introduce them to you guys. Are you guys ready? I see we got 5 people watch, 8 people already. Wow. My mom's tuned in from her car ride at work. Messaged me earlier. She was like, why aren't you live yet? I'm like, you got the wrong time, lady. It starts at 7:30 in the morning, local time here in Melbourne, as I introduce my very first special guest. He's making his Submission Radio debut, big debut. I've been wanting to have him on the program now for a really long time. He's done it all from the Sherdog Radio Network to all of his great work across UFC Fight Pass, including extra rounds. TJ DeSantis, welcome. Welcome to Submission Radio, man, for the very first time. It's great to have you on the program.
What's the quickest you've had someone tap out here on Submission Radio? Can I break that record?
Listen, man, I dated a girl for a couple of months and, it didn't last long. Let's just say that.
Fair. That's fair.
TJ's like, why did I come on this program? And joining me also on this show, man, I love reading this guy's articles. There's another great one that's just popped up. We'll talk about it a little bit later on the show. You know him from his incredible work with Uncrowned across a number of shows. One of my favorites to speak to now, my new best friend, the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. How did you end up in this position?
Well, you just kept bugging me until I came on. So here I am, man. You got me again. No, it's great to be back. And this is fun. We were talking just a little bit before we started. It's been a long time since I've sat down and talked to TJ. So this is like a little bit of a reunion here.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, no matter how big the MMA space gets, it's still very small and niche at its core. And I think it's been like probably 10 years, Chuck, since we've...
it probably has been that long. And I guess we're the only two left that aren't just influencers now. Like we're still old school. So...
I mean, I like to think that I have some influence, but I'd be lying if I said
I did. Hey, I'll tell you something, fellas. There is a lot to talk to. Of course, everybody chuck your questions into the chat. We'll be talking about a whole bunch of topics, but you can always ask us a few little spicy questions on the side. And fellas, it is UFC 316 fight week. TJ, I got to go to you first, man. Give me a rating out of 10 for this card that we're going to see this weekend.
I mean, I'm excited just because I love Merab so much. We talk about influencers and social media. It's kind of weird that we've had this sort of reversal. O'Malley's completely, not forbidden from social media, but he's taken a gigantic step back. Morab, I think, has embraced social media in a way that's made him incredibly popular. I think if you're a Morab fan, don't get me wrong, I think his fighting style is very exciting, but I think the personality has really driven him sort of to the top of the sport at times, and it's not exactly the role that I expected him to be in as a champion.
He's running down mountains, Chuck. He's putting up videos of broken toast, cuts over his eye. Dana White is convulsing in a toilet somewhere as he checks his feed. I mean, this guy's...
I feel like he's got to be trolling. He's got to be trolling Dana at this point, right? I mean, each one of these videos when they come out, I'm like, you worry that you're watching one of those things where somebody is going to go tumbling down the mountain. Those crashes that you see on social media. I feel like he's got to be trolling at this point.
Chuck, when you look at Merab, have we ever had a champion like this in the past? Like, could you compare him to anyone? He's kind of like an old school, like UFC 1 type guy, right? He gives me those feels.
Yeah, he's very different, right? Just in general, I feel like, and it's kind of crazy, and you guys can weigh in on this if you want. I mean, the lack of heat, I guess when I was at that last show at the Sphere, and there was a lot of, I would say it was more entertainment. It wasn't like it was bad blood, but it was almost like O'Malley was treating him like a nuisance that he had to kind of deal with. And obviously we saw what happened. I thought there would be a lot more bad blood heading into this one, just kind of given that, the fates are so entwined at this point. And if O'Malley loses, I think that's probably it for him in the division. He's not going to sit behind the 8 ball after losing twice in a row to the champion. So given all that, I thought there'd be a little more heat. So this is arriving a little bit quietly, which is bizarre to me. I don't know. I guess there was a point in time, I mean, you guys can tell me what you think. I mean, I thought O'Malley was kind of cresting in that sense of like, he's become like the kind of guy it's must-see TV if he's going to be fighting. I thought he was reaching that level. And it's crazy to kind of get to one of his big fights, like a pay-per-view where he's fighting for a title. And it doesn't seem to have that yet. Maybe, I mean, we're doing this on a Wednesday. Maybe that picks up. But as of right now, I still feel like it's very quiet heading into this weekend.
I look at what the UFC does, and I think they do amazing things. Mainly pay me. But I will say, beyond
I'm like,
that,
nice t-shirt there, TJ.
Thank you. UFC Fight Pass, biggest no-brainer in all of combat sports. But I will say,
it's great stuff, by the way. I will say, I was checking some of that stuff out, like the extra rounds. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chuck. You know what? I look at, if there's any one thing that the UFC doesn't do great, I think they're hamstrung by trying to promote as many things as they're promoting, whether it's last week we were doing the FPI in Las Vegas. You have numbered events. You have, albeit a disappointing culmination to Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber. You're trying to, promote all of these things. And sometimes if champions aren't loud enough, they get lost in the mix. And that's one thing that I've said the UFC has never really done. I don't think the UFC creates stars. I think the UFC gives platforms to stars and they shine and, make as much noise as they can. And if there's anything that's getting lost in the shuffle here, I think it's the fact that we're pre-International Fight Week. All anyone really ever wants to talk about is if Jon Jones is going to fight Tom Aspinall. And unfortunately, I think maybe this card's getting lost in the overall mix a little bit.
I want to TJ. It's an interesting time because TKO Group obviously own both WWE and the UFC, right? And you just can't script it. Like the WWE, they released a well-known wrestler called R-Truth, I think this past week, and they had a terrible WrestleMania, in my opinion, with a dumb finish that absolutely made no sense. And people kind of got a little bit disillusioned. They're saying that the WWE feels soulless, fellas, that it's lost its soul. And it's funny because with the UFC, obviously crazy occurrences like the main event not happening. Like who could have predicted that, right? Like super tough to pick. Obviously, their stars not being available. The matchmaking's not really coming together like it used to. And people are saying a similar thing about the UFC. Chuck, I want to go to you first, actually. Like, what do you make of the fact that people are now saying, hey, TKO is kind of taking the soul out of these two products? Because it's happening at the same time, right in front of two kind of fan groups' eyes, in a way.
There's something... we go through cycles of this where we're like, we're getting inundated with too many events. There's too many happenings. There's no off season. And we kind of go through this like fatigue period. It usually happens when there's a little bit of a downtime in the sport. And I guess May kind of was like that a little bit for the UFC. But at the same time, there is always something, about that type of thing. Like, it's almost like you can start to sense when the spotlight kind of turns off of something, or just it starts to turn just a little bit, or something's changed fundamentally. I can't put my finger on it, but it does seem like maybe it's just the Apex cards in general. Like I know we've talked a lot about like these Apex cards become like these filler events. And sometimes it's almost like a junior varsity type of event, right? Like, and I'm not trying to some of them I really enjoy, but I'm saying they become like that in the minds of the public, and maybe that has something to do with it. But I know I would say there's some truth to that, not to like talk about our truth, but like there is some truth to this. It's like I feel like there's a kind of waning. And maybe, TJ, you tell me, like, if you're on social media and stuff like that, I feel like those types of complaints, or the amount of people, especially in light of, just things that have been going on lately that have said, like, yeah, I used to follow the UFC, I don't really follow it anymore, seems to be at an incredible number. I don't know if it's always been like that. People are more vocal, but it just does feel like it's flagging a little bit to me.
To me, it kind of comes down to fan, because I honestly, when I say this isn't a hot take by any means. It's going to sound like one, but I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a combat sports fan. It's just whether or not you want to invest the time into it. You can literally go from seeing Morab Dvalishvili to, being this guy on Dana White's looking for a fight to becoming a world champion, and you can watch all of it. It's if you want to invest the time to watch and care about an LFA or look at CFFC and do those things. We had those things 10, 15 years ago. It just wasn't in one platform. It was, are you going to watch HDNet fights on Friday night? Are you going to be excited about these prospects? And I get the burnout. Like, what is a hardcore fan today? That's my biggest disconnect.
That's a great point.
I've been watching the sport and covering it, full time since 2007. covering it for a job. I've been watching it since 2002. And if you're willing to invest, the time and effort it takes to follow every single storyline, there's plenty of storylines. Like, I was legitimately hyped up for Aaron Blanchfield and Macy Barber. It was I ducked out of Disneyland early to go to my car away from my family so I could watch this on my phone.
They're like, there's a guy in his car and his phone called
no.
security.
Right, exactly. It was horribly heartbreaking, but I understand. I mean,
did you have a wristband so you could get back in at least? Something
I'm an annual pass holder.
Did they let you back in after that, TJ?
Oh,
or you
yeah.
banned for
Well,
life?
no, I just thankfully my wife said, "Oh, we're ready to go home." So
He's with me. He's with
yeah.
me.
I looked like a sweetheart. I pulled the car up. It was a nice exit. But honestly, I just feel like people are burnt out, and I understand it. But people that are romanticizing about where the UFC was and where it is today, I don't think they're romanticizing about the sport. I think they're talking about their fandom and their level of intrigue and interest. Because, it's different. It's not like we get a lot of amazingly hot prospects that people have been watching, say, in the second tier down for all these years, and they're finally making their UFC debut, etc. We kind of have that, despite her already fighting in the UFC in Kayla Harrison. But I'm legitimately excited to see Kayla get her UFC title opportunity. So again, there's burnout, but I hate to say it, I think it's kind of on you. If you want this to be the biggest UFC card and you're willing to build it up as the biggest UFC card in your head, it'll feel like the biggest UFC card on Saturday night. It comes down to each individual.
I will say real quick that the barrier of entry, we were talking about 15 years ago, back when we kind of started covering the sport, the barrier of entry was a lot simpler. You kind of, there at the time there was WEC, so the lower weight classes were down there. The UFC was kind of cut out for 155 and above. It was just clear-cut champions, clear-cut events. It was just very easy to follow. I think now that there is so much, there's all these different vehicles. There's a lot of different, was it 44 or 46 events a year or something like that, plus all the extra things. You're right. It does come down to more of a commitment, I guess. If you're going to be a true diehard, you got to have a true diehard's mentality, because there's a lot to keep up with these days. More than even I can. I mean, I cover the sport like you guys, and it's more than I can keep up with. There's times you just have to kind of catch up where you can, right? So it's entered that kind of realm. But the sport itself, in terms of what you're watching, has delivered way more than it used to. If you go back and watch some of those old cards, they felt big in prospect, but they're kind of duds. If you kind of go back and look at them now, you're like, well, that fight didn't deliver, that didn't deliver. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it really comes down to that, how much you're willing to invest. And like I said, I got a kid and a wife at home. They don't want me watching everything every single Friday night.
I hate that.
And I kind of, for my own personal sanity, I really only look 2 weeks ahead, guys. My brain can't, I can pull up facts from 2006 much easier than I can today. But the whole sort of look 2 weeks ahead, that sort of keeps me sane and doesn't get me overly excited for things that don't appear to never happen, like Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones. But not
naming names.
It's what you got to do. Again, it can be as great or as terrible as you want it to be in a lot of ways.
The Anvil roasting us in the comment section. You guys don't watch combat sports, you watch UFC. I watch Glory, ONE FC, judo tournaments, sumo when it's season, old school pancreas. That's pretty. Fencing. The Anvil, that is a true fan. What about the fact that fans are saying if this Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall fight does not get made, it's the final straw? TJ, have you seen those comments online? People seem like they're at their wits' end. They're signing petitions saying that if this is it, this is it. I'm tuning out of this UFC thing if this doesn't come together.
We've had that in the past. What are the great fights that really never came to fruition? Fedor and Couture, that was one. People said, oh, if we're not really going to get a quote unquote real world championship, I'm not going to watch this. Even to me, Chuck and Vanderlei, I know they fought, but it's not real to me. It wasn't in the prime. We still got it. People, we're going to get what we get. And again, whether or not you approach the television set like it's Christmas morning and you got that Red Ryder BB gun hiding in the corner, it's up to you and whether or not you're gonna allow yourself to feel like a 4-year-old on Christmas morning or not.
I think some of it's frustration, just it's an interesting. I don't know, what would you call it? What is Jon Jones doing? It's an interesting victory lap, but this lasted almost 7 months now, where he's just kind of, and I think that it feels like to people that he's kind of rubbing people's nose in it a little bit. It's almost like it's incongruous, right? Like with like what the actual thing is, like what he's addressing has nothing to do with the thing at hand, which is the structure says that you should be fighting. Like there's an interim champion who filled in for you back in the day, who's been waiting for you, and he's living his best life and doing all this stuff. I think it's frustrating when fans talk like that, man. We've been around long enough to know that there's just frustration. People want to leave, and I mean, some people do. Some people get out and they just kind of like something like this might do it, but most people don't. You know how it works, man. Hype it once it starts hyping up one other way, like the fans are going to be there. I'm not too worried about that. I just think that Jon Jones, because one of the fights we didn't get was Jones versus Ngannou. And I feel like, so, there's this compounded idea of the continuing frustration of Jon Jones not getting what you want with Jon Jones specifically.
Yeah. And just real quick on the Jones front, he's deserved this. I know it's not what everybody wants, but like, he's a guy that he's the best fighter we've ever seen, pound for pound. He kind of is the ultimate heel. The only time I ever hear anyone really cheer for Jon Jones is when he's fighting Daniel Cormier for whatever reason. DC, like the greatest example of a human being, gets booed when he fights Jon Jones. But it is what it is. And one thing I'll say, getting back to the Anvil, who posted that he's basically consuming everything that is combat sports. If you want to feel excited about a sport that maybe has lost some shine to you, in combat sports as a whole, get into jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is so exciting right now. It's blowing up. I feel like if you're trying to, because like a lot of people will complain about this with pro wrestling too. Like pro wrestling is always at its peak in everyone's like childhood. Everyone talks about how pro wrestling was better when they were a kid. It's the same thing in MMA. And I'm just trying to implore people to sort of look at it a more optimistic way and go, look, like, yeah, maybe it's not 2007. Maybe we're not getting that level of excitement that you used to get, but it's there if you want to go out and find it.
I love it. TJ, bringing a rare positive vibe to submission radio. Me and Chuck,
he's not as jaded as the rest of us.
I know, we're all broken inside. This guy, speaking of someone who maybe isn't as positive, Jon Jones responding to Instagram posts of me and Luke Thomas, still having some time to respond, laughing out loud at these nerds, still not realizing whose world they're living in. So, fellas, if we are in fact living in Jon Jones's world, but this fight doesn't come together, Chuck, I want to go to you first. What do you make of Tom Aspinall saying, hey, I'm moving on. I'm going to the next contender. Jon Jones is retired. I'm ready to fight. Let's move this thing along. In a world, if this fight doesn't come together, and after this, we get like an Aspinall-Garn fight, for example.
Yeah.
How much of a disaster do you think it could be after all of this?
Well, I think from his perspective, what has he had? Like, whenever he's had a ton of time. I think he's the longest reigning interim champion, which is just kind of a mind-blowing thing to contemplate. But he's had a lot of time to come up with a strategy. And I think that, honestly, when you really think about his situation, this is kind of the play, right? You just start to disregard the guy who's supposedly kind of just holding the belt out of your reach. You're not able to unify the belt. So you say, like, hey, it's not me who doesn't want the fight. I'm the champ now. I'm the, as far as I'm concerned. Psychologically, we've seen people do things like this in the fight game a ton of times. You just start to live by a different reality than maybe what it is currently. Who knows what the UFC ends up doing? If Jon Jones really doesn't want to take the fight, who knows? I know that Tom Aspinall himself said that he has a date, right? Didn't he say like he has a date and he has a location? Something along these lines. So, like, if that's the case and it's not Jon Jones, from his perspective, I mean, there's only one way, and that's forward. You got to go fight the guy in front of you. You got to do something. He's in the prime of his career, so he's in the worst spot. And to hinge his legacy on somebody else's is just, and let it play out that way wouldn't be smart business,
It's interesting, TJ, because obviously if this fight doesn't come together, there's another man out there in Francis Ngannou who could be a great dance partner for Tom Aspinall. Do you think that with Tom being potentially a dominant champion in the heavyweight division, not many options out there for him outside of Garn and a couple of other guys sort of to the top of the rankings, that puts Ngannou in a decent spot for the UFC to welcome him back in when he's ready to potentially start this sort of new rivalry with Aspinall?
Sure, I'm gonna watch it if it happens. I'm gonna watch it. Like that's the thing too. We're all picky. We all want things on relatively simple. Give it to me now timelines. But whatever's gonna happen, it's gonna be the right move for the UFC. It's gonna be maybe not the right move for legacies and all those sorts of things. But at the same time, I think if you're cheering on Tom Aspinall, you want to see him fight Jon Jones. You want to see, the maybe not the ending of that legacy. I'll never count out Jon Jones, but I don't think he would be a favorite in this fight. I think it's a very tough fight for him. But if it's Ngannou, I mean, who would argue with that being, a second prize? You know what I mean? But I don't know. Lawyers got to get involved with that. I don't know what the whole situation is. Like I said, 2 weeks at a time. That's all I'm looking at. 2 weeks at a time.
This is at least 6 months.
Right.
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 I mean, you could do, Alex Pereira versus Francis Ngannou while we figure out, nice little warm-up fight while we figure out Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall. Like, there are a couple of.
I think that's the only one that, what TJ said. I think if it ended up being Ngannou, that's probably the only scenario that wouldn't seem like a consolation.
Right.
It would almost seem like you've struck gold, on like as a plan B.
I'd take that over the Jones fight at this point. Like I feel like that would be
fascinating. The Ngannou fight, you take it. You were in the car park
absolutely
watching Macy Barber versus Aaron Blatchfield, man.
That's true. That's true. But that's the thing too. It's like it comes down to emotional investment, and going back to Barber and Blanchfield, like I'm emotionally invested into Aaron Blanchfield. I called her EBI victory at EBI 12. I called her fights in Invicta, and like that's what I'm kind of saying to fans. Like if you get invested, you're going to find all these storylines that mean something to you, and like the novelty of fighters fighting, that's gone, guys. Like fights happen every single day of the week, so it's like what you're willing to attach yourself and what stories you're actually interested in, and who isn't going to be interested in any story that involves either Jon Jones, Francis Ngannou, or Tom Aspinall.
Well, you know what the one thing about that, TJ, is like each one of those names, it's kind of inconceivable still, in the minds that somebody will lose. I always feel like, and they get so rare. This is why Ilia Topuria, with Makhachev would have been such a big fight, is because you're putting together two guys that's actually transcendent of the idea that somebody is going to lose this fight. They're both on heads of steam. They both seem invincible heading in. We get very few of those instances. The heavyweight division in this situation is kind of similar, right? Like, because I think that Aspinall, where he's at, Jones, where he's at, obviously, it makes for that kind of transcendent quality. We just don't get a lot of those. In the end, you're right. I think everybody just kind of falls in, well, whatever happens. It has to run. But I do think that there's certain fights, if they could ever come together, that it'd be fun to see how today's modern crowd would handle them. We just can't seem to get to them. It's really weird. Like we're not getting to a lot of these kind of super fights that would have that kind of potential. But I'm not giving up hope that we'll see something like that this year.
Well, look at the calendars starting to look a little juicy, 317, 318, 319, all
TJ's
solid
like,
fights.
I don't even know those exist.
He's like,
I'll look into them in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, brother, in 2 weeks. Yeah. And I mean, you could also make an argument then why watch regional MMA when you can watch a UFC Apex card, which is basically regional MMA these days, minus like maybe one or two names like a Gamrot. But I will ask this.
Or a Blanchfield.
Or a Blanchfield, of course. Yeah. Sorry, TJ. I don't want to upset you.
I've got the answer on why to watch.
Of course. But my question is, did the UFC fumble the bag by not negotiating the right way with Francis Ngannou and potentially getting this heavyweight division in the right spot in hindsight, Chuck? Do you think that the right negotiations here? I mean, he was asking a lot here, Francis. And TJ, Dana doesn't love to address people when they ask for things. He likes to sort of run the game, and they were, I guess, in a position where they could say no. But ultimately, was it a mistake by just not going with Francis here?
I mean, it's a mistake from the fans' perspective of saying like, hey, we could have had this fight. We could have had a crazy heavyweight division, maybe the best era ever, right? You know what I mean? But
wow, thanks for depressing us even more here, Chuck. Jeez.
But if everything that you've heard about kind of the stipulations as to what Francis wanted were true, it's just the UFC has never done business that way, So in a stranger, I guarantee you, I don't know enough. I don't know everything, just like most of us don't. as to what went on in the negotiations or how that all went down. But it felt like two sides were trying to get away from each other in the end. And in that sense, you're like, it's not good business for either guy at that point. Ngannou was able to get like, crazy. And I think most of us were transfixed when he's fighting, in the boxing ring against these huge named heavyweights. I mean, like historic heavyweights at the time. So in a weird way, we still got what we wanted out of Ngannou. Like, you got to see him compete and all that stuff. So I don't feel like from his perspective it was a mistake. From the UFC's, from the fan standpoint, it's going to seem like one, because we don't get to see him against Aspinall. We don't get to see him against Jones. And I think right now, any of these fights, any of these iterations would probably be among the very biggest fights they could do this year.
TJ, you're an optimistic guy, so let me ask you this. Let's say Jon Jones and Aspinall does happen. Jon Jones comes back, beats Aspinall. He's like, deuces, guys. I'll see you guys later. And then he leaves the heavyweight division in the state that it's in. What do you do then?
Well, I mean, then everyone's going to be like, oh, well, we didn't get Francis and John, and that story's incomplete. Like, I think I'm overly optimistic, because at the end of the day, the only thing anybody's ever going to talk about are what ifs, what could have, what should have been. And I don't know. I don't think you can be a fan of something for as long as we have, with always being pessimistic. And we talk about, did the UFC fumble? Maybe, but it's all temporary, honestly. Like, we can't answer any of those questions until we're removed 10 years and we can go, okay, we didn't actually get that, and I don't know. Like I said, maybe it's just the way I stay sane. I'm trying to focus on this is what's happening right now.
It's just a wild time, though, because if Aspinall loses, right, and he's kind of like the only dominant heavyweight in that division, then it's true.
Yeah, because
all right, well, let's give him another title shot against Cyril Gane now, even though the chance, you know what I mean? Right. And then it's like, oh, maybe Almeida could be the, it's well,
that's why when you mention, Pereira's coming off a loss, but we're still kind of plugging him into scenarios at heavyweight. It's just because in most cases, either the names aren't there yet, or they've been cycled into that, like, all the guys who just keep beating each other. You know what I mean? Like, they're just there. Like, Cyril Gane might be the best example. Like, he's still there. But we've seen him lose. We've seen him. It's just not going to have the same sheen as some of this. So that's the unfortunate thing of the heavyweight division right now. It's just there's a huge drop off in intrigue, and the desire to see those fights after the first couple there, right? Like,
it's always been that way, though.
Yeah, it has for a long time. It has for a long time. Yeah.
This is why there are heavyweights that have been around for 10, 15 years, up until recently, that have been contenders. There's a reason Andrei Arlovsky was there for so long. I mean, people are still excited about Ben Rothwell outside of the UFC. And
yeah, he's fighting in Perth in July.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's on your side of the pond. Yeah.
Yeah, how about that? Jeez.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a significant drop off, but I mean, that's heavyweight.
Yeah.
Hey, just quickly before we jump into UFC 316, obviously Alex Volkanovski, everyone wanted to see him fight Mosa. Then the UFC was headed towards this crazy Yair rematch direction that nobody wanted, right? Like, people were like, no. And like, this is Australian fans as well being like, come on, man, you're taking the piss. What the hell are we doing here? Even Volkanovski was like, I want to take Mosa's unbeaten record, blah, 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 blah. It made sense. Now the event has turned into a fight night. Can they sort of recover this? I was talking to John Anik earlier. That's going to come out soon. And he's like, well, Pico and Mosa, like, that's still not 100%. Like, they haven't actually put it up on the website. Chuck, do you do a course correction here when you saw people were like, man, this is bullshit? Do you just give Mosa this fight and realize, hey, maybe Dana, you were talking about the wrong guy on the card. You got a little confused here.
100%, man. I mean, I'm one of these guys with Mosar who's been in his corner. Like, I don't even understand the hate he gets, to be honest, man. He's one of those guys I find very entertaining to watch fight. And what is his? I mean, he's undefeated, right? Like, he's undefeated. The guy has had, I think, 7-0, something like that, 9-0 in the UFC, just on a tremendous run. I don't know what else you got to do to kind of put yourself in that position. And you're going to get pushed back for Yair, who I think has won one fight in his last 3. And it's nothing to do with Yair. I love Yair, but like, that doesn't make sense to me. If you got a fresh fight, that's what you do. Plus, it's not even just that. It's like, you have the perfect opponent for Rodriguez, do you not? Like, Diego Lopez is out there, and you have this big September card that's the Mexican independent. It's like, shouldn't that be the fight? That's really where it comes down to. It's like, you kind of have tailor-made bouts right now that are just easy to make. I don't know why they would look at any other iteration there.
TJ?
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that. Now I really want to see that Lopez fight. I love watching Diego Lopez fight. I mean, he's phenomenal. But
especially because they have that bad blood, right? Like they were kind of arguing, they kind of stole that.
It was great.
Yeah, they got to put that
Good
together.
fight.
Yeah, I like it.
They're talking about Jon Silva's Diego Lopez, TJ.
I mean, Jon Silva, he's awesome to watch too. But I don't know that Lopez Rodriguez fight. Yeah, give me that.
Dude, it's interesting as well because you got Pico coming in too. Interesting time for the division. You can almost do like John and Pico, but then I guess you're killing off a couple of contenders. What do you guys make of? Let's get into the UFC 316 chat. I want to kick this off first. What do you make of people saying that Merab is already sort of the GOAT in the division, right? He's only just become champion, but he kind of had to fight the best of the best to get there. He took the Bilal Muhammad route to the belt. What do you make, Chuck, of the fact that people are already sort of labeling him the GOAT of the division?
I love these kinds of questions because then you got to remember exactly who did what. But
well, we got Dominic Cruz,
right? I know, and Dom forever was there.
TJ Dillashaw, but that's kind of
I wouldn't. Dom Cruz would be close in the sense that I mean he was there forever. I know all the injuries and the infrequency of the fighting and all that stuff. I could see the argument, I guess, like in the sense, especially like when you're fighting in the situation he just was. I'm talking about Merab, where he had every disadvantage in that last fight against an undefeated fighter in Umar, who it felt like everything was geared toward him. Everything was geared towards him. So Merab's fighting through injuries, everything else, short turnaround, and to go out there and put on that kind of performance and to actually win that fight, I thought that was pretty. Like that was a special moment, like for any champion, but for a guy like him who I think had so much writing on it. I think if he gets through, there's a lot of guys, right? So if he gets through O'Malley again, I think you revisit that type of question this year. But I think he's got to be close. You might be able to. I mean, you could easily make the argument right now, just given who he's fought. I just end his string of dominance. Like if you just look at the stats. What he's able to do, control time, the way he beats guys, I'm sure you could make that argument. Yeah.
TJ, I mean, a few interesting champions in the past that people might have forgotten about, like Hannon Brow, who was killing it and then kind of went on this, like jumped off the cliff, right? Like was just like, whoa, what happened to this guy? Question. TJ Dillashaw used to be incredibly dominant. Cody Garbrandt, that guy was the champion. People might not even remember that. Henry Cejudo as well, right? Yeah, what do we put in Merab here?
The GOAT conversation. Let's talk about Merab being the GOAT after 4 or 5 title defenses. Like we're rushing.
There he is.
Honestly, like again, like I said, even when we're talking about did the UFC fumble the bag, you need time to digest everything. I mean, I'm a weirdo, and I still think BJ Penn's the greatest lightweight we've ever seen, despite Khabib never losing. But yeah, I don't know. The GOAT conversation, there are 2 GOATs in my world of combat sports. One is Jon Jones, and then the other is Nick Thompson.
Okay, awesome, man. Nick was awesome. And Fedor.
He's the GOAT. Never mind.
Okay. I was like, Nick Thompson? I should know
That's his nickname, the GOAT.
His nickname was the GOAT.
Okay, great.
He fainted every time. Like, yeah.
I love it.
Keith Jardine, too, because he looked like a goat. That's one.
Yes, there you go. Jardine of Maine. So when it comes to Merab, he says he has no interest in moving up. He wants to stay in his division. He doesn't want to fight Arthur Volkanovski. Kind of refreshing to hear a champion not talking about wanting to win another belt, right, fellas? Like, this is a nice thing to see. Someone wants to stay in their division for once. But the question here is Sean O'Malley getting this rematch so quickly. The first fight was so dominant. Obviously, he had an issue with his hip. So he wasn't 100%, but Merab was basically destroyed himself physically too. Chuck, how different do you think this rematch is really going to look compared to this first fight? And if you're Sean O'Malley, you really need to make this look somewhat different, right? Otherwise, this is going to be a nightmare for you to get dominated once again by Merab.
If I'm Sean O'Malley, I throw away the first 4 rounds and I only focus on the 5th, right? That was kind of the only round that he had moments where you're like, okay. But I felt like it was also a round when Merab was just like, whatever. So it's a weird one because I was in the building. And I would say the drama of that fight left at about 2 or 3 minute mark of the first round. It's just like it started to take on that pattern where you knew exactly what was going to happen. I I didn't feel like O'Malley had anything for him after a point. And even the body language and the things that were happening, there was that famous quote from his corner. It's like, hey, we're almost through, one more round, we're almost through, like, where it's just kind of like, it feels like they started to give up before the fight was even over. A lot of that has to change. I think that he's going to have to set a tempo early in this fight. It's going to have to happen. He's going to have to be in that fight in the first round. He has to get through that first round and still be in that fight for anybody to think that this is going to go different. And what does that mean? I mean, I think he's got to keep the fight standing. And if he, I think he's going to have to establish himself there on the feet and land some shots that's going to put some doubt into Merab's head, because I didn't really think that happened the first time through. I feel like the biggest danger of this main event is that it takes the pattern of the first one. It takes the pattern of the first fight, and then everybody at the end is like, why did they even redo this? Then that would be the worst case scenario.
TJ, I have a question here asking what happens next if O'Malley wins, but I want to flip that. So John Atlas to what happens next if O'Malley loses? Because you go on 2 back-to-back losses. Of course, Merab's the champ, but like doesn't leave that much for you in the division. People are saying, hey, why not move up? You got a good frame for it. What do you do with O'Malley? Let's say if it's another dominant win by Merab.
I think a lot of it comes down to whether or not mentally O'Malley can bounce back. I mean, he's in this good spot where he's not smoking weed and not doing social media and stuff like that. But if he's
masturbation.
I mean, that's okay. We'll save that for another
I mean, isn't
day.
he really in a good spot, fellas? Like, what do you even do with your day outside of those things?
Well, that's another question altogether, because like we see this all the time when fighters lose, they try to fix something, and maybe you can't fix this. I mean, styles make fights, patterns make trends. If he's not able to stop that pattern, like Chuck was saying early, I don't know what going back to the drawing board does look like for O'Malley, but he's supremely talented. And another thing too, we need to realize is like, not everyone is going to be a world champion or bust. You can be in the UFC and take fight after fight and build up a nest egg and become, a star and a superstar, even at that. You don't have to have the title always to sort of leave this great legacy. And it comes down to what you sort of think the legacy you want to achieve is. But let's be realists. Like maybe Merab's just a guy that O'Malley doesn't get by, and it doesn't mean he has to hit the panic button.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fascinating one. So much on the line. Chuck, I want to know from you, dude. This whole coach situation with Tim Welch, such an interesting one. Like, if you're Tim Welch here, surely you're like, all right. In the first fight, Merab was like yelling at me in the octagon because I
like in the first 15 seconds, wasn't it?
Like right how do you not do it again, right? Like strategically, like he has to be thinking, all right, I'm just gonna throw something at him at the start just to see if he bites, right?
I mean, I would.
How could you not?
I mean, we talk about all the time, like, why not just take at least one good groin shot? Like, hit somebody in the groin once, poke him in the eye once, grab the fence once, because you're only going to get warned anyway, right? Like, so why not? If I'm doing that and Morab is that distractible, I mean, I don't know. But although I will say that of all the guys who I really believe that you don't want to piss off and disrespect, it's got to be Morab, right? Like the whole Nurmagomedov thing that was happening when he was getting ready to fight, and he was like, his whole thing was like, this guy's disrespecting me. If he's not gonna have respect, we'll take him out the woodshed, the old way. It's not like Iron Sheik. Like he just thinks that way, and it's like you sometimes wonder if you're just poking, if he's sleeping, but like you're just poking the bear, right? You're just poking the bear when you do that stuff. But having said that, if there's a strategy in play to distract him, I mean, why not? Like whatever they can pull out of their hat for this one, they should try it. Because honestly, if you lose this fight, it probably means you're leaving. You're probably going to featherweight. You know what I mean? It's a lot of stuff that maybe you don't want to do, but you might have to do. And if that's so pull out all stops, right?
If we get Tim Welch screaming at Merab and we get a reaction, can that just be the co-main event for Ray Longo and Tim Welch? Because I'd love that war of words.
That'd be great.
Oh, I love it. Hey, TJ, just quickly, how does Sean do at 145?
I mean, that's the thing. I have to look at the rankings. I think it's interesting.
We got Aljo. We got Aljo there, right?
That would be interesting. Like,
you're going to put him against a guy who's already fought.
No, I mean, like you could leapfrog him, right? You could probably leapfrog
okay.
a few
But
people.
Aljo, I think, is a
That's true.
completely different beast at 145. I don't think we've really seen it yet, and I'm curious what that would be like. But I would say the question is more interesting to me is how does the UFC sort of approach him? Is he in a co-main event sort of spotlight? Is he a main event of a fight night? What are their prospects for him at 45? Does he wear that weight well? Does he still move and compete the same way at bantamweight? Those are all curious questions.
You imagine a world where like the UFC's just like, all right, like Sean O'Malley's not injured. We're going to put him in a co-main event on this next card against like Aaron Pico. Winner gets the title shot. And Mosa still waiting for the title. And Alex is like, oh yeah, me versus Sean O'Malley. All right, that's better than the Yair rematch. Let's do that.
I mean, that's the other thing too that I think is almost getting back to the point at hand with Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. It's like fighting is not a meritocracy. It's not. It's a game that you market, to your fans and try to give them whatever they need to click that buy button on ESPN Plus. And whether that's right or wrong, I guess that's a different question altogether. But if you think of things as just strictly a meritocracy-based system as a combat sports fan, I think you're going to be upset more than you are excited and happy.
I mean, for guys like Bilal Muhammad, for instance, who had to just keep going forever until it had to be at some point, unless it was going to reach levels of absurdity, it had to be a meritocracy for him, right? Like there are certain guys like that. I feel like Masvidal is in that situation at this point.
But
like,
I end up cheering for those guys more. I like to believe in a meritocracy.
Leon was like that, right? Like Leon, it was like he felt like he was always 2 fights away from a title until he finally got it at that one point.
Dude, you know who else was like that? Alex Volkanovski. They didn't even want to sign the guy for like 100 fights into the UFC. And there's also guys like Khabib, who, by the way, wasn't getting a title. Like, there's a lot of guys that had to go through that. Hey, just quickly before we go to the co-main, what is the next fight then for Merab? Like, let's say Patchy Mix goes out there, lights out performance against Mario Bautista, or Corey Sandhagen is waiting in the wings, or we've got Piotr Jan sort of hanging out in Russia. He's like, I'm ready to fight. What are we doing with the next contendership for the title? Chuck, I'll go to you first.
Oh, man.
Do we do an eliminator there, like Jan Sandhagen or Patchy Jan?
Patchy Mix is very interesting, right? Because he comes over. What is his win streak? Is like 7 in a row. He's only lost once. It was a split decision. He really lost one big round. Like he's that close to just being undefeated coming into this whole situation. He's a reigning champion. If he goes right through Batista, I think he could make the case. It kind of sucks for guys like Sandhagen. Like I wouldn't mind that if that's what they want to do, but like, wouldn't that be kind of like, okay, this guy who came over, it's like a champions. It's the closest thing you get from like pairing off champions at that point. And I think that would be a golden opportunity if the UFC wanted to do it. I would not be surprised. And, even though they have trained together, Patchy Mix and Merab, you get the sense that they have a handshake deal. Like, hey, if it comes down to it and we got to fight, we'll fight. I always love that kind of backstory.
TJ?
Get at me 2 weeks before it happens. And
here we go. Mr. 2 weeks over here. All right, I feel you,
That's
man.
Your new show, like 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
2 weeks out. Santis. Yeah.
I think there's a Netflix series already named that about like big events happening, and they talk about how they are formed. So.
My show would be like 2 weeks away from Mental Breakdown at the end of Submission Radio, the Dennis Scrowder story. Hey, guys, before we get to the co-main event, I want to shout out a couple of things. How about this? We got, I just started a Submission Radio membership, fellas, and we have a couple of legends here. We actually have our first member, Old Man Dave, became a YouTube member. Thank you so much for supporting independent MMA. Old Man Dave. He also gifted 5 Submission Radio memberships. So it's going to be Old Man Dave, my mom, and 5 other people who are Submission Radio members, which I'm really excited about, and also donated $5. That keeps the program going, guys. So thank you so much for that, because people don't realize this. I have to take the SB Nation thing off the thing, but I have nothing to do with SB Nation now. It's just actually me all by myself working a full-time job and doing this. So appreciate you supporting the channel so it's possible for me to do it. Also, fellas, a quick plug as well. Chuck, I know your balls are always smooth, but what about your face? I know you always have some stubble sometimes. What about the Manscaped Chairman Pro, huh? Look at this bad boy. This would sort Chuck out any given day, any given time. The balls are smooth, match the face. The Chairman Pro is one of the best Manscaped products out there. You guys can get 15% off with the code word submission. And also, TJ, I know you love to go to Disneyland. Well, Saley is the best eSIM for you. You can watch all the fights you want in the car park because the internet plans are amazing. You can top up as you need to go. Saley.com submission, 15% off for new members. If you travel around the world, fellas, I know, or if you want to burn a phone for those extra mistresses, we all know how it all happens. Saley is the place for everybody out there in the comment sections. And again, if you guys want to support Submission Radio, you can become a member now. Some exclusive stuff there, Q&As, all sorts of stuff. But all in all, make sure that I can keep doing the show. So I appreciate you guys. What about this co-main event? Juliana Pena, I don't want to replay this video. It was basically on Submission Radio earlier this week. I asked her about the PED comments when it comes to Kayla Harrison. Man, and she went on a crazy rant about how American Top Team, they like to shoot drugs into each other's ass. She knows this. She's heard about this. I don't know if you've seen this, TJ, but it did happen in the last 2 weeks. Is she going too far, TJ? Is Juliana Pena going to fire? Or is she just trying to bring some interest and excitement into this division and into this fight?
It could be some of that. Like I said, it's not a meritocracy. It's about marketing. And even when you're at the top, it's still about marketing and trying to generate buzz and interest. I'm genuinely excited about this fight. Talking about Kayla Harrison, just a couple of years ago, I didn't know if she would ever make it to the UFC. It didn't look like she was going to. 35 seemed to be too difficult. Her motivation seemed to be waning, under her last promotion. It's an exciting fight for me. We'll see what happens. I really don't know. Stylistically, I think this is a really good fight for Kayla Harrison. But if there's anything I will never do again, that's count out Juliana Pena.
I mean, I was just going to say that's the thing, right? I think Juliana Pena is because we've seen it once. We've seen her do this where it felt like she was almost like an interloper into the situation where she shows up and she's like calling out Amanda Nunes, and it was so bold that it seemed ridiculous because I think we'd seen her, on Tough and everything else. We'd seen her kind of talk and do this stuff, and nobody took it too serious up until the moment that she beat Amanda Nunes. So it's like she's kind of in that situation again. I think that she is the biggest underdog for a champion in UFC history. I think somebody was telling me that she is going into this fight as the biggest underdog as a champion, which she loves to harness that chip on her shoulder. This is only going to feed into that, right?
Yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
It's interesting as well, fellas, because Kayla Harrison, and I want to get into this just quickly with you, is cutting crazy amounts of weight to make this fight, right? Like, what was her judo weight, TJ? Like 170 something?
Yeah, something like that. And that's the thing. She's not someone who's like incredibly small in between fights. She gets up there.
No.
I don't know. That's the thing that I'm sort of keyed into.
34 years old, Tej. 34 years old.
Crazy, man.
Who gave you the license to call me Tej? We'll save that.
Come on. T-shirts.
Like 3 people have that. 3 people have that license. You're not one of them yet.
Is one of them?
What?
No,
we've known each other for 3 minutes. Come on.
It's true. 37 minutes maybe at this point. But I will say that's the key battle that I'm sort of tuned into right now is what is that scale going to look like come Friday, and hopefully everything's fine and we're not talking about weight come fight time.
How much do you think this impacts her performance, Chuck?
I mean, she's done it a couple of times.
It has to.
Well, I think it has to, because this is a sustained thing. I think what was her first fight against Holly was April of last year, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously, so when she gets through to that, I was like, how is she going to look? Because she's whittling herself down to something that she's never done, as far as I know. Like, she had never done anything. I think she did say she tried a test cut and she got down there. But anyway, she looked like the same, world beater that she is when she got in against Holly Holm. This last one, against Yair, it's the same thing. You had the same concerns. I thought she won the fight handily, but there was a silver lining, I guess. Yair was able to see the scorecards, was able to last with her. And I don't know in terms of what that means if, for instance, you get a Juliana Pena moment where she comes on like an onslaught, like she did against Amanda Nunes, and just wears her down. She just presents herself as something that's not going to go away and just wears her down. What does that mean then? So I think there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of a 5-round fight. Like, what happens if it's 2.5 rounds in and Juliana Pena is still there? What does the fight look like at that point? You know what I mean? So I think that there's I think that the weight cutting, you keep waiting for it to be a factor, but the older she gets, the more that becomes glaring. You know what I mean? It becomes a thing that you really think about, because, dude, that is a ton of weight. It is a ton of
Oh,
weight for
dude,
her
you gotta
frame.
make it
You know,
every
her
time.
frame. Yeah. And on the dot, you know, she's got to be there on the dot. So
Yeah, and
TJ.
Penny's a dog too. When I look at that Nunes fight, like she turned that fight around on like 2 or 3 jabs and just sort of stole the will away from Amanda Nunes. Kayla Harrison has to be perfect. She has to be perfect on Saturday. And how perfect can you be if you suck the life out of you, literally and figuratively, to get there? So it's very curious to say the least. But we'll see what happens. I expect Kayla Harrison to probably be on point despite it sucking, and she's likely to get her hand raised. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Yeah, Juliana brings like a little tornado in there, and she's such a veteran. She's beaten some big names, like even Amanda Nunes. But people are saying, all right, if Kayla Harrison wins here, brings a little bit of electricity to the division, especially with this potential Amanda Nunes fight between Kayla and Amanda. There's the beef, you know, the stories from ADT, blah blah blah. Chuck, how big do you think a Kayla Harrison Amanda Nunes fight can be for this division right now?
I think it would be a big one, because where we left off with Amanda Nunes was she's going to be inducted in the Hall of Fame later this month. You know what I mean? But like where we left off was that she was the GOAT, right? Like, so her coming back to take on what would then look like, you know, I don't know what, Yvonne Drago or something like that of the women's ranks, somebody who came in there specifically designed to just kind of overthrow everything that stood before it. That's big. That's business, right? Like, I feel like that's good theater. Like, that's the kind of, especially given their backstories, you know, in Florida and everything like that. I think that just adds to it. I guess it also adds a layer of intrigue to me that the biggest fight or the biggest bane of Juliana Pena's existence is Amanda Nunes, right? They're at 1-1. So even if she wins, you've got that set up, right? You've got this trilogy. And I think that at that point, Juliana Pena, even though if we tuned her out, some people that had tuned her out about that trilogy fight and all that stuff, you would then have to listen to that. And I think that would be a decently sized fight as well, because now you're talking about Juliana Pena, who has beat the Harrison and Nunes, and now you'd be setting up a big fight for her. It's kind of win-win. As long as Amanda Nunes is coming back and she's the dangling carrot out there, it's kind of win-win for the UFC.
I think Nunes' marketability is going to be bigger than it ever was, too, after a Hall of Fame induction. So, yeah, I don't think that they can really make a mistake here, no matter what happens on Saturday. But, yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't, hoping for a Nunes and Harrison match.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the bigger fight.
Yeah.
That's the bigger fight, just given who they are, where they came from. They were behind partition. Didn't look like they could ever fight because they weren't even in the same weight class.
Right.
So I think that sets up really nicely.
I wonder if you're Ronda Rousey, you're like, oh, I beat this chicken judo. Let me make a little bit of extra cash and come back for one more.
Hey,
I mean, she fought Amanda Nunes, right?
I've heard Ronda's been doing some jiu-jitsu, and we might see her potentially down the line
Wow.
on a jiu-jitsu stage. So that'd be exciting.
Wow.
How's that, Chuck, huh? Things happening here on the show.
Yeah. Well, he was saying that the jiu-jitsu world's picking up. I mean, there you go. That's like that's what's going on. It would be cool for her to return to some form of combat, to be honest. I feel like that chapter of her career just feels like it was left so abruptly. I just feel like there's more. She's got to write some kind of ending to this.
We didn't get the ending we wanted.
Yeah.
In pro wrestling, you put the guy over on your way out and you still have a send off. Ronda,
Yeah.
I mean, she put over Nunes and whatnot, but we didn't get that closing I think that we wanted. And maybe she's not even capable of that. She's so competitive. I don't know. Maybe jiu-jitsu would be the worst thing for her, but man, I'd love to watch it.
Dude, I love it, man. Hey, a couple of shout outs here before we get into the rest of the card. Lazybeard, Dennis, you're a legend. Chuck, lot of love for you, Chuck. TJ, I miss rousing on Ian on ANF. You're a bunch of buttes. Thank you so much, Lazybeard. A lot of big fans here tuning in for you guys. I'm very lucky to have you here. Alex Odom from Alabama to Australia. Much love, fellas. Shout out to Casper. We miss him. Yep. Got up with Casper the other day. He's doing well, so I'll pass that on to him. And also, Just Bleed Radio. That's Old Man Dave's project. Make sure you check that out. That's also a great show there as well. All right, fellas, before we move off the card, what else am I missing here? Obviously, Patchy Mix on the card as well. TJ, what are a couple of fights here that people are missing that needed a bit more attention going into this?
Just gonna have to pull it up here.
I have to pull it up. It's been a tough.
I printed it out just in case.
I mean, just while you do that, Kelvin Gaslam is on the fight card. Interesting to see what happens with him. Obviously, Kevin Holland is fighting Vicente Luque.
I feel like Joe Pyfer's kind of dropped the ball a little bit, man. Like he kind of had the sentiment on his side, like people beat Joe Pyfer, all this stuff, and now I feel like people kind of view him differently. Just when he starts yapping, he starts opening his mouth, and suddenly it's changing. You know.
I will say undercard Josh Van is must see
Yeah.
TV. He was a phenomenal standout from Fury FC, doing big things in the UFC.
23 years old, right? Like he's so young, man.
Yeah, absolutely. KG and Joe Pyfer is an interesting fight. I'm curious what Gastelum still has left in the tank as far as motivation, desire, skill set. I think he's still very much a UFC caliber opponent. And Vicente Luque, Kevin Holland, come on, I'll watch that any day of the week.
By the way, KZ MMA gifted one Submission Radio membership. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you, KZ. What do you guys think of Kevin Holland and his
He answers his phone and says yes. Doesn't even know who's on the other line.
But is he wrong? Is he right? Like, Chuck, okay, it's prize fighting, right? We're trying to make as much money as possible. We're trying to take the fights that we can. And that's what it's all about. Like, it's prize fighting. You want to make money. But there's no one more transparent about that or sort of looking at the game like that right now than Kevin Holland, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's just like straight up about it.
That's what's so fun about it. It's like there's really like, what are the stakes of Luque versus Holland? There's nobody's trying to get a title shot at this point. They're just going to go out there and put on a show. That's why it's the first fight on the pay-per-view. I think it delivers for that reason. Kevin Holland's kind of the guy you want to have in your back pocket, man. Like you said, he answers the phone yes. Who's going to say yes to fighting Hamzat? What was the notice on that? Like, there was no hesitation.
18
so I feel
like that,
yeah, it's like, so when you get in those situations, it's almost like you want to have that guy on speed dial. I was doing a little like preview thing and writing a little roundtable, and we were talking about this very thing. And I was like, it's kind of like that Chris Lieben territory. There's guys like that through the time who were kind of like this. You just felt like they're like, all right, well, just take off my shoes, take my hands, I'll go fight him. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that's kind of the territory. He's a more skilled fighter than some of these guys who think that way. But I think his mindset is like that.
And that's the other sort of, I think, positive side to maybe the sport not being a meritocracy. You can have a long, steady career by just saying yes and not have the result held against you all the time. Just go out there and perform. Matt Brown was a guy like that. Like, we used to call him the TV champion because he was always kicking off a Fox card. Win, lose, or draw, Matt Brown was going to be on that first main card. And again, we all want to see the best fight the best at the end of the day. It's what we led the show off talking about. But there's nothing wrong with just staples filling out cards, being company yes men's, and they'll have a long career for it.
You know what I love about it as well? He's doing it across 2 weight divisions. Isn't that funny? Like, he'll be like, I'll fight welterweight, but then I'll fight, I'll go up here, I'll go here.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. That's something weird. Like, I don't think people think about that enough. Like, he's like, look, if it's a good enough fight, and I'll do this. But I haven't seen anyone do that before.
He's a businessman.
Right? Like, Dana White's friends with him behind the scenes. They love shoes and sneakers and stuff. Surely not everyone has the ability to be like, I'm just going to jump up to this weight class for one fight.
He thought a lot about it when he was in there with Hamzat. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, that was bad.
Oh, man. All right. Well, it'll be an interesting fight card. There's some interesting fights on the line. Obviously, some big fights around the corner as well. But I want to talk about something that happened this past week that obviously hit the MMA world pretty hard. The passing of the great legend Jordan Breen. Someone who I never got a chance to speak to or meet, but when I was a fan watching the sport, obviously you, TJ, Jordan, and obviously yourself, Chuck, you guys are the guys I was watching. Jordan was one of the guys that got me excited and interested and informed about MMA before I even knew what it really was. Like, he was somebody who I was always able to watch and sort of marvel at the fact that this guy knew so much, that this guy understood the game so well, that this guy had this kind of passion for it. It made me want to have passion for it too. And the way that he was able to deliver his work in the sport was remarkable. It was game-changing. It was not something that we'll ever see in the sport again. TJ, I know you got a chance to work with him, obviously at Sherdog. Crazy to see such a legend gone too soon.
100%. And Jordan was one of a kind because it wasn't just that passion and knowledge about MMA. It was like everything. He was 4 years younger than me, but he was infinitely wiser about nostalgic things and pop culture, things that he had no business even knowing to the level that he did. And he was one of a kind in so many ways. And, I worked with him from 2007 at Sherdog until about 2017. And I remember when we hired him for the Sherdog Radio Network, he was like our Japanese correspondent. And I was like trying to figure out Skype at the time. We were going to give him a radio show. And I was like, it's going to be a weird time difference over in Japan. He wrote this article called the Kobosin Companion. It was talking about, A and B level Shudo and all sorts of stuff. And then I found out he's a 19-year-old kid that lived in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I was like, wait, what? He lives there? And, we did a lot of really special things on Sherdog. And, I talk about hardcore fans. I don't know who hardcore fans are today, but if you remember the Jordan Breen show, you're among the hardest of hardcore, because he would break down everything. The last segment of his show was literally called Jordan Breen's PB&J of MMA, where he would dig in the MMA tracker and find out, fights that you've never even heard of. Like, people don't know the name Danny Lefevre. This is my prime example of Jordan's depth of knowledge about MMA, because Danny Lefevre was a guy who's 1-0 in the Fight Finder. He ended up in a ring with Benji Radek, who was a UFC veteran and, a very accomplished fighter. But Benji lost to Danny Lefevre. Danny Lefevre wasn't even a trained fighter. He was just dating Benji's ex-girlfriend, and they had to sort it out. And wow, Danny ended up getting a win. And Breen was able to pull that up and find that sort of stuff. Like, his level of just hardcore knowledge, again, not just about MMA, but everything. He was a one-of-a-kind individual. And that one hit me hard. And I still haven't really dealt with it. It's hard to say goodbye to someone that I would say was my podcasting soulmate. I mean, I've done north of 10,000 hours of podcasting on MMA, and I would say Jordan was there for at least 50 to 60% of it.
The crazy thing is you guys were sort of doing it as well, like pioneers in the sport, like we would all watch you. You guys were able to sort of, create what now we're able to, like, there would be no submission radio if you guys weren't doing what you were doing back then. You know what I mean? Like, you informed and inspired and, helped a lot of us even just get into the sport. What does it feel like for you, though? Because that's something that, that's a legacy that no one can take away. The work that you and Jordan did together has such a huge impact on all the media and all on fans, on the sport today. It must feel pretty good to know that, okay, no matter what, like, this is always going to be there in the history books, the work that you guys, the important work that you guys did together.
No matter what I do in my time in MMA, and I'm still very much chasing my dream, but no matter what I do and accomplish, it's never going to feel like the days of the Sherdog Radio Network. And you say, like, you watched us. No, you didn't, because there was no video. It was radio. and I miss those days, because there was this idea to do the Sherdog Radio Network when Jeff Sherwood said, hey, I want to start a radio project with you. I was like, okay, cool. We'll do this show called Beatdown, and it'll be me and Josh Gross. He's like, no, I want to do a network. And I was like, okay, I like that idea. I came from FM radio, and a lot of people talk about, oh, you were a pioneer in that time. I wasn't really a pioneer of anything. I was just literally trying to take the FM radio model and bring it to a platform that didn't have anything like that. Yeah, there were podcasts. I didn't even know that word when we started the Sherdog Radio Network. When someone said, hey, get your show on podcast, I was like, what the hell is a podcast? I didn't know what it meant. Like, I immediately thought I needed to buy an iPod, which I didn't have money for. I was like, what does that mean? How do I do broadcasts for my iPod? But the things that we did with Jordan, whether it was our roundtables or, I still think we did the first ever post-fight show for UFC 71 in May of 2007. We had live listener calls. I had to buy a $1,500 telephone hybrid to plug into a board that I bought from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I needed to create a mix minus, which, that's, if you're a real audio nerd, you know what a mix minus is now, but like, I didn't know what a mix minus was back then. I knew from radio. I bought incredibly overpriced equipment, and we just made it work. Like, you haven't gambled until you've spent $2,000 on a radio console from eBay. Let me tell you that, because I got this radio board from eBay. It didn't have a power supply, so I had to buy this radio board. I ended up buying a power supply from someone in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They drove it to me in Minneapolis. The lights worked. I was like, cool, this is going to work. I come home, plug it in. It doesn't work. It's basically just a box with some lights on it.
Oh, my God.
But, in connecting with Jordan, it was life-changing in a lot of ways. And we were just doing it. No one thought about making money. No one thought about this being a career. And there's something very sweet to that. It was just done for all the right reasons. And I've seen a lot of people say some really nice things about Jordan and myself and Jeff and Greg Savage. And, we didn't think about anything other than just talking about MMA, and to know that we've made some sort of impact, it gets me emotional, man. Like nobody does anything really with the longest of things, longest projections of, like, I definitely wasn't thinking more than 2 weeks ahead then either. But to know that we've impacted people and maybe even shaped the landscape of MMA media or how people consume things today, it means more than I can say.
Yeah, man. You definitely have. You have for me, you have for so many. Thank you for all the incredible stuff you've done. Actually, as well, Chuck, you wrote a beautiful article. It's just dropped. I'll put it in the description, but I just have a little part here. No subject was too small for Jordan. No avenue of thought too obscure. No subject matter too taboo. From what I saw, he never worried about getting in trouble with his takes. He just spoke his mind with his love for the sport, fueling his enthusiasm to get it all out. Beautiful tribute that I hope everybody gets a chance to check out. Again, it's in the description. But what did Jordan mean to your career here in the MMA media, man?
Well, I'm listening to TJ, and I was like, when I came in really to cover the sport in 2008, I'd paid attention, obviously, to the sport, but I wasn't covering it until 2008. These guys were the voices, man. It was established. I was intimidated, to be honest. Like, I know when TJ or Jordan would call me to come on the show, this is probably more in the 2010, I don't know, somewhere like beyond into the tens. But even then, I'm already writing at USPN. But my depth of knowledge, because I went on a show once, I even wrote this in the piece, and it was like the odyssey of a savant's mind. This dude, the way he could just, and I mean, his digressions really were the brilliant thing. Like, he was so good at just like whatever you brought up, he could just go, man. It was like he and it was intimidating. And he was a young kid, and I remember thinking, like, dude, I may think I know what I'm talking about, but he is like encyclopedic with what he knows. Like, he can just, and it's not like he's like pulling it up. He's got a file in his mind that he can just flip to and instantaneously come at it. And I saw this in numerous times, dude. He was a marvel to me. I always thought that he would end up being, in the way that Ariel Helwani, Luke Thomas, these guys who are now kind of staples in the industry. I always thought that he was destined for that sort of gig, like that he would be a guy. It was of that original voice set that was like kind of put the I don't know, the levity. I tried to point this out in this piece too, that the levity to the highbrow, like he was kind of a highbrow almost thing that he did. Like, he was very smart, but it was also levity. Never forgot how absurd the sport was he was covering. Like this, he was always, and I just felt like that was the philosophy I took. I was like, you know what I mean? Like, there were guys like him who laid that foundation. So, yeah, the family of MMA, the guys who started it, the ones who ran with, the ones who helped build it. I think everybody owes a debt of gratitude to a guy like Jordan Breen. I mean, he was one of a kind, like TJ said. And man, I know one thing, I will miss him. I've missed him the last few years. Like, you always think about even just his written stuff. Like, everything he did was like I couldn't get enough of. So it'll be a tough one for the family of MMA to get through.
I made a joke about Nick Thompson earlier, and that's a joke
Right.
that like 5 people get, but it was one that I always made comfortably because it was made for Jordan Breen. And you talk about sort of the levity that he brought to, like, he would love to break down an Aspinall Jones what if, but he'd also go off for 45 minutes about Deep's Outsider show, which was basically like biker gangs getting together and fighting, or like a night fight, in armor. Like, he just loved the silliness of MMA. And again, like, I can't stress this enough. Like, it never stopped with him either, even if it wasn't topics that had nothing to do with combat sports. I remember we were calling Patchy Palace Fights card where Ian McCall and Dustin Ortiz were the main event the next night, and I had to literally close the little door between our hotel rooms because at 4:00 in the morning, he's like, TJ, what do you think about Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad being the best written character for television? I'm like, Jordan, shut up. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to talk about it. I need to go to sleep.
Oh, man. Such a legend. And again, rest in peace, Jordan Breen. And I hope that everybody gets a chance to maybe go back, have a look at some of the great work that he's done. And TJ, I appreciate you sharing so many stories. I mean, What an incredible legend.
Beautifully
Guys,
said, by the way, man.
yeah,
Well
beautifully
done.
said.
I don't even think the words are there, and they're
Yeah, I
definitely
know.
not there for Jordan's level, because to this day I still only know what the words vitriol and trepidation and Machiavellian mean because of Jordan Breen.
As we wrap up, guys, I just want to say a big thank you to Chuck Mindenhall. Of course, check out all his great stuff on Uncrowd. And TJ, what's coming up, man? What's coming up this week that you want people to check out? Obviously, you got a lot cooking.
Yeah. So Fight Pass is kind of my home these days. We'll have a marathon that will stream probably on Friday, where we'll just show some fights of all the athletes coming up on the 316 card. We'll
Love
do extra rounds, which if a lot of people are familiar with my work at SureDog, I did a show called Beat Down After the Bell for a very long time. We basically do the same thing. Unfortunately, it's on video, so you got to look at my big dumb face. But that'll be up on the Fight Pass YouTube and Facebook streams. We talk a little pro wrestling. I don't talk about it too often, but I do produce a show called The Laps Fan with Jack and Curcio and JP Sorrow. It's a very unique, one-of-a-kind type of deep dive into pro wrestling, and they're in the midst of their tribute to Sabu.
Oh, yeah, man. Sabu.
So check that out wherever you get podcasts.
Awesome, man. All right, well, fellas, that is it for us here at Submission Radio. Make sure to check out the fellas. Give them a follow. Again, a big thank you, Chuck Mindenhall. Of course, you, TJ, as well. Thanks for joining me, TJ DeSantis. And we are out here for Submission Radio. We'll catch you guys next time.